All right, everybody, ding, ding, ding. We are back at it again. This is Troy Vaughn, also known as Trey Amazing, part-time stripper, part-time pastor, but full-time dating commentator. This is Ringside Presents Corner Confessions, and I am here with the illustrious Marla Renee Stewart. If you don't know, well, first off, if you don't know her, then something wrong with you, and you're obviously not in my crowd, but we can fix that. Don't worry about it. But if you don't know, she is the co-founder of Sex Down South. And so I've been invited to Sex Down South a couple times. I've loved it. However, right now I want you to kind of do, I can give a description, but I know I won't give it justice the way you can. So we are here because of Sex Down South. But before we, kind of move forward, please give a brief introduction about Sex Down South, the origins, and what motivated you to do this.
So, Tia, well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. And for Sex Down South, Tia and I had been working together for a while before Sex Down South. So she had recruited me, and I love our love story. She always tells this part of our love story. Mm-hmm. But she recruited me for one of her events that she was doing, and she said when she saw me on the internet screen, she just fell in love with my bald head and wanted me to speak. And so I spoke at her event. It went very well. We just clicked, it's just it was just one of those connections. And so we ended up immediately clicking and decided, hey, let's do something else together. And so we did my birthday parties for years. And I remember my very first birthday party, I had 200 people at my house.
Oh, wow.
It was a circus theme. We had fire dancers, a mobile spank booth.
A mobile spank booth.
Okay. We had, pie eating contest. We had, this thing where we hung down. It was a love touch thing. I forgot what it was called. Fried Twinkies and fried Oreos. And
now we're talking.
We just had a really good time, a Mexican rock band. But it was just a great all ages, potlucky kind of thing. We had a cookout, and it was great. And so it was a 12-hour party. So it was from noon to midnight.
All right. Okay.
And it was absolutely amazing. So, from there, we just did a few other events together, at my house. And what ended up happening is we just sat one day. We were in my living room, and I was like, I want to do a conference. I think we should do a conference. And she's like, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, I'm thinking something like 3 days or whatever. What should we call it? And she just blurts out Sex Down South. And I was like, yes. And it was just this beautiful moment. It was just whoa, it was like black girl magic just appeared in the air. And we don't know. We were like, how are we going to do this? We don't know, but we're going to make it happen. And so with the $200 that we got to put in the money for our business, we had no money to make it happen, but we did the research, we did the surveys, we did, and our first year, it was just amazing. We ended up breaking even, but we had equipment donated to us. We had, all sorts of amazing things. People, threw in money for scholarships, and so it was great. We had about 250 people show up for that conference, and every year we've been growing about 100 people. So we're in our 8th year now. And this year we're talking about healing and restoration and what that looks like for us. And so I'm just super excited. But the Sex Down South is Tia and I's baby, and I could not ask for a better business partner. Friend. It's just a beautiful, beautiful collaboration relationship. So, yeah.
Well, the first time I attended was 2018. What year did you guys start?
2015.
Okay. Yeah. No, and I'm trying to remember. I think either my admin Kim or someone, or maybe I saw it on Instagram and I reached out. But I know 2018 I came to.
Was it the Hilton?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I came down there to do radio, do a podcast or something like that, and I was in amazement. I was like, wow, the room was electric. I got an opportunity to network and meet so many great people, many of whom I'm still, in contact with now, either via social media or, direct, actually got phone numbers. But I just remember like, wow, this is a good idea because it helped me to see, the additional side. I met people who talked about leather play, who talked about black polyamory, who talked about. I met one of my favorite couples. I met D Black and Lady V, and they were doing face sitting classes and things like. I was like, who does a face sitting class? But I know them now. They are a righteous couple. I love their energy. And I actually have to say that I actually credit you and Sex Down South. We've been doing Ringside for over a decade, and Ringside is always focused on singlehood, dating, marriage, and sex. And that's been the theme for a very, very, very long time. But I remember explaining to someone that Sex Down South and seeing the people that it brought out really encouraged me to add kink and fetish to the theme of Ringside. So just within the last year, a lot of people, if you go to the Instagram or the group or even here on YouTube, it's singlehood, dating, marriage, sex, kink/fetish. Because we realized, like, look, the fetish community is a lot bigger than people give it credit for. It doesn't matter if you're at school, at work, church, look to your left, look to your right. Maybe both of them are in a kink and fetish community, and it's a beautiful sight to see. And I think Sex Down South, I think it's an awesome event where it celebrates, that kind of diversity, and it's empowering. So, year to year, it's getting bigger. It's its own institution. Is there a certain theme every year? I know you briefly mentioned. So what inspires a theme every year?
Tia and I just kind of think about the theme every year as to what our experiences have been sort of out in the world, with our separate careers, and coming together, what that looks like. So our first year, the way T and I also connected on was around like Tantra, spirituality, sexuality, and how all of those things are combined. And so that was our first year. So our presenters, were Tantra themed presenters, spiritual presenters, things like that. And then every year we just kind of decide, whatever's happening, right? So, we've had one year, I think it was called like Fucking for Freedom or something like that. I think.
Fucking for Freedom.
Yeah. I think it was right after maybe Trump had been elected or something. But it's definitely something's always feminist theme, right? We think the personal is political. And so how do we navigate that in our lives, in our sexual lives? And so with the pandemic and everything, we had themes with that. We had, but this year's thing, like I said, is healing and restoration. So we're thinking about how are we being healed? What are the ways that people tend to heal themselves? How are people taking care of themselves to ensure that they are, having a better and brighter sexual future, right? And what does sexual liberation look like after we've come out of this pandemic? So, we know, hopefully the experts say, that COVID, we should be done by COVID by March, but, we'll see. But we still know that we're still going to do the hybrid thing. So we did a hybrid last year. And, we said, those of you who feel safe, come on out. Those of you who don't, get online. It's all good, And that also helps with accessibility too. We know at Sex Down South, it's very family reunion, you know? So it's like, we love the hug and kiss and cuddle. And so the year before, when the pandemic happened, 2020, we just went to full, you know, online, and that went pretty well. And we were able to sort of curate that kind of environment, but there's nothing like being in person. And Tia and I know that. We are both, you know, extroverted and wanting to love and hug up on people. So
you extroverted?
Yeah, can you believe it?
Okay. No, I feel that, and Tia's awesome too. I had I think it was 2019. We had an opportunity. We were invited back, and we interviewed Tia. Very open, very just all around. I love her personality, and I mean, just the way she just talked about the conference and the, you know, how welcoming that you two have been to everyone. The crowds. I mean, for me, that's why, you know, an interview with you is something I've been wanting for a very long time. When I first started this channel, you were at the top of my list. Like, okay, I got to interview. You know, I want Sex Down South to have a video. You mentioned the word politics earlier. I mean, when it's all said and done, I mean, this is Atlanta, Georgia, but it's still Georgia. Georgia is, you know,
in the South, the Bible Belt.
It's very much. See, you already knew exactly where I was going. You know, in Atlanta, I mean, even though Atlanta is a strip club capital, it's also, you know, the church on every corner as well. Things can get rather conservative very quickly, even among Black people. Things can definitely the conservative, you know, nature is still very much around us. How does an event like Sex Down South thrive and flourish, even, you know, under this conservative undertone that's still very much present here in Georgia?
Well, I think it's the people that gather, you know what I mean? When we're, you know, with Sex Down South, it is a sexual liberation movement. We are thinking about all the intersectional ways that we are thinking about our identities, how our identities are moving through this world, and how we are all connecting, and how are we all learning from each other. So it's, even though, you know, we're here in the South and we're like, we're not going anywhere else. Like, it's Sex Down South for a reason. Now, we do want to expand a little bit to, like, you know, to other little cities. But for the most part, we're like, it's important that we bring the work that people are doing in other places to the South, so we can engage in it, just fill ourselves up, and know that there are people all around that are doing this work. So I just think it's imperative that we do it in the South. You know, I come from California.
Oh, nice.
And, you know, when I came here, I was like, wow, Georgia is like 10 years behind. You know, I mean, coming
just
from
10 years, I would think a little, you know, a little more than that, but we'll stick with 10 years.
From, you know, coming from San Francisco to here, it was just like, wait, what's going on here?
Welcome to the South.
But yeah. But you know what? There's so many people doing so many wonderful things in the South, and in a lot of ways, the South is leading the people in different ways and helping people to understand accessibility, understand like all these different identities. So many people in the work that the groundbreaking work that they do, that they're spreading to other places, they've come from the South. You know what I mean? So you have to understand that there's so many beautiful minds that have just incredible ideas, philosophy, theories, practices, and that in and of itself is helping to cultivate our sexual landscape. Right? Not only here in the South, but nationally and internationally, right? So for Sex Down South, you know, we always have a Canadian presenter. A lot of the times we are, you know, we're reaching out to our neighbors above, and like thinking about how we can, you know, how, and even international, we would love some international people more than just Canada, but
soon,
soon, yeah.
Speaking into existence.
Exactly. And so really thinking about how, people are engaging. And every time I have a virtual event with my company, Velvet Lips, I'm having people from Prague and Iran and I've had people from Czech Republic, like folks from all sorts of places, London, the UK, like all sorts of places. So I know the reach is there, but it's about like, how are we cultivating a place where we know that they can come to the South, engage in this energy and this dynamic and or contribute, and then, take it to where they live so they can tell their people about what's happening. And how are they moving the sexual liberation movement forward? So, and how are they moving the Black sexual liberation movement forward? So, I think Sex Down South is we're making moves. We're doing the things that we need to do to make it happen. And I, even though the folks that tend to be conservative in the South, I think when they come to the conference, when they come into that environment, they really realize that, like, oh, I've connected with some people, or oh, I've learned something about myself, or I've learned something about a community or communities or something. They get something out of the situation. So, I would say, my wife is on a bit of the, more conservative side, right? And so when she went for the very first time, first of all, she was kind of like, she was thinking that, everybody was going to be like butt naked and, doing all the things. And when she went, she was just kind of like, not
that bad.
It's not that bad. But then she also learned something about herself, and she was like, this was really good. This was really amazing. And like, even though I wouldn't have thought to ever come to here, like, I'm coming here because of you. I'm so happy that I was here because I learned so much. And so to be said, even though there's Black folks who are conservative, who are afraid, I think just stepping into that environment, bring a friend or two. I know, bring your people with you so that you can actually talk about it, talk about the experience, and see like, hey, it's actually not so bad as people, would think, or, have the assumption of when you say Sex Down South.
And you kind of just answered the question that I was about to ask you, because Atlanta, even with everything else going on, can still be conservative, and so when you and T have been doing this since 2015. So when you hear, regardless if you hear about it word of mouth or see it on social media, for some people, an event called Sex Down South is going to create certain images. There will be stigma. There will be people are going to make assumptions. People are going to generalize. People are going to stereotype. What are some of the things that you've heard as far as, even people who may not have either attended the conference, or people who, like you talked about with your wife, who had a certain impression, came to the conference and then realized, okay, it wasn't exactly what they thought. What are some of the things that you've heard, or people, may have stigmatized Sex Down South? What are some of the things you've experienced?
I think people sometimes think that people are just openly having sex, like, I don't know, like, we create an environment so that people can be sort of encapsulated in the event, right? So, we black out the doors and whatnot. So people have that option. If they want to walk around nude, they have that option. A lot of people don't, they don't walk around nude. People aren't just used to it, There's the stigma thinking, that people are running around naked. People are, possibly having sex in front of you.
Like, it's a conference, y'all. It's not an orgy.
Yeah. Right. It's the Sex Down South orgy. It's the Sex Down South conference, right?
You're not going to walk in a room. It's not a gangbang.
You're right.
Like, the reason I say it, because I've actually had people, even when I marketed Sex Down South in my group, people are like, oh no, y'all doing some orgy stuff down there. I'm like, look, it's not an orgy. It's not what you think. It's actually, it can be very educational. It can be very empowering. And at least that was my experience. I'm not going to, from my experience and from the people I've spoken with, very much educational. It is something where you can have an impression or a thought or think, okay, this must be going on. But some of the people that I've met, even, you know, the empowering as far as sex workers and getting an opportunity and understanding, like, you know, sex work encompasses so much than what you think it is, and it's not something where it has to be or feel like you have to demonize or vilify. Like, no, that's not what we do here. And, you know, for me, that was the biggest, even, you know, the first time I came there, I was like, that was the biggest life lesson for me, and something that still resonates with me even to this day. Because that's been a growing thing as far as, you know, helping to destigmatize, as far as ringside and what we cover. You know, we've certainly made a big push to destigmatize sex work. But I do know, just from even people that have seen my advertising and the marketing of the event, and, you know, people either in my DMs are like, well, you know, what is it like? Or I've heard about it, but I'm afraid to go. Or a long time ago, one person said, well, I don't want anybody from my church to see me go. I was like, you may go there and see some people from your church.
Right.
Like, it does happen, but
we also have church-going people too. Like, you have to
Absolutely.
understand. Like, I mean, I've done workshops for churches. I've done workshops for couples ministries. So, you know, I think when pastors of a church understand the meaningfulness behind sexuality and what that means that they are ushering their community to understand themselves, their body, their partners. Like, they get it, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of times people, like you said, it's just all that stigma of thinking it's something, because we talk about so many things, they think like it's a wild thing happening. But in reality, we have so many spiritual people who have presented over and over again each year, church-going people. So it's not like it's not for those people. We explicitly have it on the homepage of who this conference is, what subjects we're going to be talking about. And that's always one of the subjects, because it's important. People have their faith, and I think it's important to address, you know, people's faith and sexuality.
right. I mean, people need to stop treating it like it's a completely separate
Right.
thing. You mentioned presenters and certain topics. What are some examples of topics and seminars that someone who's coming could expect to see? Because, you know, I'm looking at it, you know, from the perspective of someone who's never been to the conference, who's thinking about it, who's, you know, interested but not sure, you know, if it's right for them. You know, what would you say, or, you know, if they're brand new but they're interested in coming to learn either about, you know, certain topics or even themselves, what are some subject matters that have been covered in the past as far as seminars, presentations, so on and so forth? What are some of the things that someone like that who's brand new can expect to see?
So there's a wide variety. Excuse me. There is sort of like the business of sex ed. So if you're a sex educator and you're like wanting to know more about business or wanting to learn more about something, there's usually always some sort of business, whether that's, you know, how to market your business, or, you know, how to do a media package, or how to, you know, whatever, sell yourself, or how to whatever, like how to write or whatever. There's always some sort of business side of sex ed. There's always something around, like I said, sexuality, spirituality, whether that's tantra, church, those kind of aspects. There's always going to be some demos. So we love to have demos because we really want this to be an interactive conference. So there's been lots of demos. So there's been oral sex demos. There has been, you know, spanking demos or kink demos. There's been, you know, just, you know, whatever you possibly could probably think of, there's probably been a demo about it in the past. Excuse me. There's, we also have a really strong stuff on like partnered stuff. So communication, how to communicate better with your partner, how to understand yourself. Maybe you're neurodivergent. Maybe you have a disability. Maybe, you know, somebody may be talking about like reproductive justice or reproductive choices that you might have. So people talk about all of those different things. Ethical non-monogamy, polyamory is pretty big at the conference. So understanding your relationships, your constellation, all those different things. Even how to write erotically. I always teach around seduction or, sex skills are always being taught.
Very important.
Yes, absolutely. What else have we taught? I mean, we have a lot of therapists that attend, so there's usually stuff around therapy. We generally have naked yoga that happens every year to start us off in the morning. There's usually some fitness class, so fitness and sexuality class. There's some really good educators that are doing who are fitness and sexuality and mixing those two. It's really cool.
I ain't mad at that.
Yeah. So, I mean, there is literally just an array of
it's something for
whatever
everybody.
you can think of. There is something for everybody.
That's the biggest, that was the biggest thing I gleaned. I was like, okay, no matter who there is somebody there of a tribe for you or something there you can learn that's applicable to your life. Your sex life, your personal life, or just life in general. There's something there that you can walk away with and benefit. One of the things that I've seen this on social media, and something that I like, that I think is very important with Sex Down South, is that it clears. Okay, let me phrase this differently. When I know in the past, and I'm pretty sure you have seen or heard this before, when you mention things like swinging or polyamory or spanking or dungeon, culture and lifestyle, I have heard several black people seen on social media, they'll say things like, "Well, that's white people shit." Mm-hmm. I think we've all, heard the phrase "white people shit," and you have a lot of black people that feel like, there are certain things that black people just don't do, or black people really aren't involved with. The conference really, kind of shed light on it, even though I didn't have that same opinion. Meeting people who talked about the growing black polyamory community and how, there are more black people involved than some people may want to believe. A lot of black people involved in dungeon culture, which the last conference I attended, I actually had an opportunity to go inside the dungeon, and it was quite an immersive experience, to say the least. I definitely dug it, but just seeing, knowing people that honestly have these stereotypes that black people don't participate in certain aspects of sexuality, kink, and fetish. What would you say to these kind of naysayers? Because I'm beginning to see, just over the years, thanks to social media, there are a lot of people who feel like, this ain't black people. This ain't what black people do.
Lies. Lies. It's not true, right? If you knew the history of black people, if you knew the history of African people, you would know that non-monogamy has been happening in our culture since the beginning of time, right? There are still many tribes today that practice non-monogamous relationships. And as black people here in America, we've been doing quote unquote man sharing for quite a long time. When it comes to family relationships and whatnot. So you have to understand, when black people say that's white people shit or whatever, it's not true. I think what happens is that people get siloed into thinking that it's only white people shit because they see only white people doing it. Whereas black people are a little bit more private, right? Our sexuality has in the past been taken from us. As black people, we've been raped because of being enslaved, of, all the things. So our histories have a deep ingrained stigma around sexuality. So a lot of times we've been private. We don't like to talk about our private things because of that history. And you can see it in the glimpses today. Like, number one, like when people say that's white people shit, or even you go to the swingers clubs and you see black people and they'll try to be, they'll even though they're at the swingers club, the sex club, they'll still kind of try to be a little bit more conservative or try to hold back. Yeah, they'll try to hold back a little bit. And
which is a damn shame. Like,
yeah, but you have to understand that it's been ingrained. Like I said, our sexuality has been taken from us. So in order to embrace that and be authentic in our sexual selves, we have to bust out of that, you know, and that takes time, work, effort. It takes unlearning those negative social stereotypes, the stigma. It takes unlearning those things. And that takes time. So, but as far as kink, you know, I would say, you know, black folks have been doing kink for quite a long time. I do a class called The Future of Black Kink, and I talk about the history of where, you know, how black people have been involved in kink for a very, very long time. And so I feel like it's just out of ignorance when people say that's white people shit, because they just don't know how deep our black history is. And in our black history, there is kink, there is non-monogamy, there are these things that have been in play for a very long time. So that is our history, and you need to understand our history before you go spouting bullshit, is what I say.
Well, no, I agree. It is absolutely bullshit. And it's like, okay, how do you claim to be an intellectual but have such a narrow assessment of black people and sexuality? And I don't know. I asked that question because I do see it, you know, every so often, especially when I market certain events, you know, and I push and promote. And when I begin to list things, you know, that fall in the umbrella of kink and fetish, I will see somebody say something about that's white people shit. And I'm just like, okay, go back on your rock. Okay, lastly, before we cut out of here, what is next for Sex Down South?
So what is next for Sex Down South? We're still doing the hybrid again. So we are going to, the conference is September 8th through 10th, 2022 this year. We always have it in September, the weekend after Labor Day. We are doing a healing and restoration theme. Right now it's call for proposals. So we're looking for people to present. And we are, what else? Like what's next is, we're going to keep going with our dungeon. Which is a fun event. Yes. Very fun. We always have a healing space. So we always have a healing space. We always have our dungeon. And T and I really want to do a dungeon. Like, we really want to have a dungeon here in Atlanta. We want to have a black-owned dungeon. And right now, I know there's an organization that's kind of working on things, but I don't think it's here in Atlanta. But T and I, we want to have a black dungeon, and we want it to be fun.
Speaking into existence.
Exactly.
Put it out there.
Exactly.
Because there are dungeons, but none of them are black-owned. None of them are
right.
Okay. All right.
Public black dungeon. Black-owned dungeon.
See, we're going to be woke in the dungeon. I ain't mad at that. So for the people out there, viewers and the people in ringside, really quickly, everybody, if you are on Facebook, please go to the search bar, type in Ringside LLC, request to join our private digital community. Either myself or one of the admins will admit you. So for the people out there, the viewers and subscribers who are watching this, and they want to get in contact with you and or want to find out more information about Sex Down South, where can they go?
They can go to my website, sexdownsouth.com, or go to our website, sexdownsouth.com. You can email either Tia or I at Marla at sexdownsouth or Tia at sexdownsouth.com. And you can find us on social media. So on Instagram, SDSCon. And on Facebook and Twitter, it's going to be Sex Down South ATL. So those are our handles on social media, and feel free to reach out to me. My handle is at @1Marla Stewart. And yeah, you can contact us that way. Make sure you get on our newsletter so that you know what's happening, what's going on. We do offer scholarships, volunteers, we have all of those things. And of course, if you got lots of money, we'd like that too. You can donate. We have a fiscal sponsor, so, good tax write-off. So, yeah.
I'm loving the tax write-off. Definitely good. Thank you so much, Miss Marla Renee Stewart, the incredible. Thank you so much for honoring me with this interview. And again, I cannot wait to come back to Sex Down South. Each time I learn something, each time I walk away with a different experience, and I always meet some of the greatest people. I meet some awesome people who are doing some great work. So keep up, you and Tia, keep up the good work. This has been Ringside's Corner Confession, and we are out.